All right, what is up? I'm going to dig a little deeper on this chart that I was looking at the other day. If you go back and watch the video I have on, it was kind of the mind blown one when it talks about all the different timings of Fibonacci on time, where the 8 and 13 match up, where the trend line breaks are. Um, I'm adding the ADX and the RSI to some of these levels to see kind of what's going on and see if we can kind of figure out where this thing is headed. Now again, not financial advice by any means. This is just kind of giving you some advice on where some support could be and some resistance could be based on the internals. And then, of course, you make your own decision and trade your own book because what I'm doing might not match up with what you are. Even though I could be right, it might not be right for you. Even though I could be wrong, and it might still work for me in a certain way based on what I'm looking at, and it could be completely terrible for you. So that's why you have to make your own decision and just use this as an educational process. All right, cool. Bitcoin, US dollar chart, or 1 day chart on Coinbase. This is the one I kind of use for that timing one. Uh, all the lines on here are just trend lines up on the price chart here. I'm just kind of highlighting an area right in here that we're kind of, in this area of consolidation that we're in, and I have one Fibonacci on here. I'll kind of reiterate a little bit of that from the last video. Right underneath, I'm plotted here with the ADX. If you didn't watch my ADX video, I just did it the other day. It's about 15 minutes long, and I kind of go in and kind of talk about what the ADX is, what these directional index lines are, and kind of give an example of kind of how to read it, kind of how to use it for general guidelines. So if you haven't watched that yet, go out and watch it. Give me a like if you like it, and some feedback on other things you'd like to see maybe, uh, or do you want more detail of the ADX? Let me know those things. The other one I have down here, the orange line, is the RSI. Excuse me. The uh, one of the main things I was looking at is, uh, we're in this area of consolidation, and I'm looking for signals of which way this thing could break out. I'm looking for either a retest of this horizontal line right here, which is that low of 9100 from a little while ago, and this trend line going, this bearish trend line from this high as it's working on the lower highs. Uh, I'm looking for either a buy at 9100 or a break of this trend line to the upside, and I would buy that on a stop. That's kind of what I'm looking at the moment. And the interesting thing is if you watched my timing video, this 108 days, for some weird ass reason, is a good timing of when trend lines actually broke. If I went back here, if you watch the video, you can see I have different trend lines, and when the trend lines were breaking, it was right on the 108 days, which is just still mind-boggling to me. But I want to focus on a couple of the trend line breaks here on the near term, or not really near term, but kind of what's happening right now. If you look at when the trend line broke, really at this point, you remember the December low of December of 18 when it hit the low. We now know that that was the low, and we've been on a bullish trend since. So if you take this vertical line down and you look at what's happening in the market, when this broke this trend line to the upside, we went into an area of consolidation, and the ADX dropped, the directional index lines all dropped together, and all tangled up. So, but the ADX was well below, kind of that watch 20 mark, as I have marked with the line right here. If you drew this line out, the ADX was low, not really to give you a sense of direction, but it was sideways to a slightly higher as it was kind of trying to break out of this horizontal trend line to the upside. But if you look down at the RSI, and this is one of the things that I think is kind of interesting, and I want to keep watching this RSI for a signal to go along with the rest of this stuff. But when this broke and it made a low, one of the main things that was the first signal was that you had a a divergence where price was making a lower low right here, and then the RSI was making a higher high, or kind of going the opposite direction. You get that bullish divergence. It was at this point, right when it broke on the December low, is when the RSI right here broke the previous high on the indicator itself, and then it popped up here. Since we went into this area of consolidation, and of course there wasn't a lot of momentum for trend, the RSI kind of went into a transition zone, because this was all bearish here on this price chart, and the RSI was down in this bearish zone, but then it got really oversold, and then it was starting to come out of oversold conditions and starting to get a little buying interest. So after it went through this, right here the RSI broke above this level, and it started to get a little bit of an emphasis for the bulls. Not a lot happened in there, but it came back down and it tested this trend line on the break right here, and went a little bit further, and it was at the point where this next trend line broke 108 days later. When this trend line broke right here, the ADX was kicking higher, the bulls were back in control, we got a breakout of this longer trend line, and the RSI didn't make a new low, so it kind of worked its way up. I don't have one drawn in here, but the RSI was starting to get a little bit of buying interest. So this right here is a major signal on the RSI that we went from this transition from a bearish transition into a bullish, and then we were in this bullish zone for about another 108 days, where this matches up where the trend line broke the bulls right here, and ADX falls down into, underneath that 20 level. I mark it as a weak ass trend strength, so it's really not doing anything. No matter which DI is trying to push to the upside, there's just no trend momentum to build for either side. So we get back into this area of consolidation. So what happened is we broke this trend line, and we went from bearish, or from bullish, not so much bearish. We went from bullish to sideways. So there's not a lot of bearishness in the market. It is a slight bearish because the trend itself is down because of the lower highs that we're getting. And then also one thing to consider is right at this point here where it broke the trend line and got weak on the trend strength, it's right about this point in here, it broke down, and then it came back up and didn't make a new high on the RSI. So what this was a transition from bullish into a bearish zone. So now these highs right here is kind of the resistance for the indicator itself, and then this area over here is where we broke. Since we know that was the low there, this is the low to watch for, kind of the low bearish zone. So if it gets underneath this line, we're going to get into a scenario like this where it gets a little oversold. But right now the RSI is in this bearish zone. Unfortunately, we don't have, or fortunately, depending on which way you are in the market, there's not a lot of trend, but we're still in this bearishness. So what I'm looking for is, I think we can just kind of ease our way. I put this as a risk zone for the pattern that we're on, and 108 days from now is going to be November 4th. So I don't know if this thing goes down and tests 9100 and kind of holds there, and goes sideways, and then we go sideways into this point and maybe break out, on November 4th to the upside. Maybe we'll break out, in the next couple of days. I don't know. But right now, with the ADX just completely dropping on a daily chart like this, with no sense of direction, except that the RSI is still signaling a bearish zone and not in oversold conditions, I feel like we can ease our way down to this 9100. Now, as we start to come down on this, if we do get down toward that 9100 and this ADX actually starts to click back higher as this is happening, and the bears get some control of trend, then I would be concerned of that breaking and working its way down to the 61.8% level of the low way back in December and the high we've had here recently this year. That 61.8% level is at 72.52. So, if this 9100 breaks, you get into this area right here of really no, it's little to no support under there. So if you were a buyer along this line at 9100 and it breaks, a lot of the long-term buyers are just going to kick back, take, have a snack, drink a beer, whatever, and they're going to reaccumulate closer to that 74, 7,500 level probably. However, until we get momentum, I don't think that can happen, and I think we can stay between this 9,100 and 11,000, somewhere in this range as we continue, in this sideways motion. So two things I'm looking for. I'm looking for an increase in trend strength for some trend. I'd like to see the positive DI is the one I want to get elevated above the red so we can get this thing rocking for the bulls. But right now there's nothing. And another thing is if this ADX starts to increase and the bulls are starting to take over and the price is getting toward this trend line, and it wants to break to the upside, I want to see this RSI break this resistance level to the upside and transition us out of this bearish zone and get us back up into the bullish zone, up into the area up in here when we were actually trending. So unfortunately, everything's kind of boring right now. A lot of indicators are going flat, but this is just something to watch for so you can watch the indicators to see if they're actually going to give us a signal one way or the other. And right now, nothing. So I am personally buying closer to 9,100. And then if that breaks, I'm going to be buying a heck of a lot more. Actually, I'll stop out. And then I'll get a lot more at 7,300 or 7,400 on that break. But for now, let's go sideways and keep watching this thing. So any questions or comments, you just feel free to reach out to me. I'm out on Twitter at FiboSwanny, and hopefully you got something out of this video. If you did, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, give it a like, retweet me on Twitter. Anything helps to get the education out there for some other people so we can learn from each other. So, all right, I will talk to everyone later, and peace out. Happy trading.